the young students are our future leaders.
I also want to commend you, red and black. You're tired tonight. I want to commend you on that, huh? Boxer proud.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Denoise? Any questions or any comments for Jensen? I can just say this is awesome. Kudos to you.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan.
You know, you reflected that we were doing postings. When you worked in my office, you were the one that created that idea. So we're just running with what you came up with. So thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do. Mrs. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan.
I just wanted to say that Jensen was here probably to speak to the school committee 5 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago. Yeah, 5
About his Hero in You program. This program, I think we did do it in the schools. Yep. Are we still presently, or?
I believe we are, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we are still doing it?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so it's a great program he presented to the school committee, and I thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you for having me,
Like that, Jensen,
Ms. Sullivan.
at East Junior High as a student.
Yes, Superintendent
Uh-oh.
Thomas was
I
my
didn't
former
know that
teacher.
part.
Yeah.
Now, he's on, and full disclosure, he's on the Board of Trustees at another high school here in the city of Champion. So go Cardinal Spellman, right, Jensen?
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan.
Any other thoughts or comments for Jensen this evening? Just want to commend you, and we look forward to hearing the results, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jensen. Be well.
Thank you.
We will now go on to agenda item 3. There were no other hearing of visitors signed in. Consent agenda, agenda 3. Again, it's pretty lengthy. It's A, B, C, D, E, and F. Is there any member of the school committee who'd like to take any matters of these out separately, or would we? Ms. Azak, please.
If we can just remove item number A, the approval of minutes for the regular school committee meeting for February 7th, 2023. There's just a Scribner's error, so I'm not sure if we have to remove it completely or,
We can amend it on the floor.
okay.
So there's a motion made to take A. Is there a motion to, let's just a second on that motion, please. Second on the motion. Second by Mr. Rodriguez. All in favor of that? All opposed? So we'll just hold that in abeyance right now. We'll get back to that. Any other school committee members want to take any of these matters out, or would we take them B, C, D, E, and F collectively? It's the will of the committee, please. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept items B, C, D, E, and F as written.
Motion on the floor. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Mr. Homer, before we take a vote on that, let me just read it into the minutes, please. B is the approval of the minutes, facilities, usage, and planning subcommittee meeting dated February 7th, 2023. C is the approval of the minutes, security, safety, transportation subcommittee meeting dated January 31, 2023. D is the approval of out-of-state trip, Empower Yourself to Manchester, New Hampshire. E is the request for authorization to submit proposals and expenditure of funds as follows. FY23 Safer Schools and Communities grant in the amount of $90,534.92. The next one will be Influence 100 FY23 FC 329 in the amount of $2,000 even. And finally, it's FY23 Diversity in STEM Education. That dollar amount is to be determined. It has not been determined as of yet. F is the acceptance of human resources personnel actions, appointments, certified personnel appointments, non-certified, and finally, personnel actions, leave of absences, resignations, and retirements. So B, C, D, and E, and F are on the floor. I'll take a roll call vote now. Mr. Sullivan? I don't need to take a roll. All in favor? All opposed? It passes B, C, D, E, and F. Sorry about that, Judy. We will now go back to Ms. Azak. The floor is yours if you could just clarify the Scrivener's error.
Sure. So under attachment, item A, enclosure number 1, if we go to the minutes, we had taken a vote, and it was a roll call vote, and it just shows how the vote took place as far as numbers. It doesn't have it broken down per member, given that I believe we went 2 or 3 rounds on that one. So as a roll call vote, we should have that broken down as to per member how they voted.
Correct.
So I remember how the votes were. So unless we want to go back and watch the recording.
Lisa, would you, I know you're filling in from Linda tonight. Would you have that information? I do not. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Ms. Azak, if you could just, to the best of your
Sure.
knowledge, just
So-
articulate it again.
The way the vote was is the first vote was to,
And we had 2 less people here that night, correct?
yes, so Mr. Homer and Mrs. Mendez were unable
Correct.
to attend that evening. So in attendance was Mrs. Sullivan, Mrs. Ehlers, Mr. Rodriguez, myself, Mr. Sullivan, and the mayor.
Yes.
So on the first motion, the vote was 3-3. So the 3 yes was the mayor as chair, Mr. Rodriguez, and myself.
Okay.
The other 3 were no's.
Okay.
The 2, Mr. Sullivan and Mrs. Sullivan and Mrs. Ehlers. We went again and had another vote, and then that one was, which it should have been the same vote, but the motion was reworded.
Correct.
So in that motion, Mrs. Sullivan made a motion to accept the 2023 subcommittee appointments as presented. That was 2 yeses, so that was Mrs. Sullivan and Mr. Sullivan, and then the 4 noes were the mayor, Mrs. Ehlers, Mr. Rodriguez, and myself.
Okay.
So if we can just, again,
And
when we do the roll call vote, I was under the assumption that we break it down.
You are correct on that, and I believe it was just a
Just a
mistake.
The numbers
I mean,
were correct.
Yep, the difference between just a hand vote and a roll call vote, roll call has to say the name. So nobody objects to that. I concur with what Ms. Azek just said. That was my memory as well of the votes and the people that voted that way. Anybody object to that? We need a motion at this time to incorporate and amend the minutes to reflect what Ms. Azek just indicated.
And I do apologize, there was a third vote. So
Okay.
the third vote was 4 yeses and 2 noes. So the yeses were the mayor, Mrs. Ehlers, Mr. Rodriguez, and myself, and the no were Mrs. Sullivan and Mr. Sullivan.
Correct. That's right.
So there's 3 votes on
It
record.
was 3 votes, and those were that was the roll call, as I recall it. Anybody object to that? If I could entertain a motion at this time to incorporate and amend the minutes to reflect exactly what Ms. Azak just articulated to the committee. A motion, please?
Motion to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Motion to approve Ms. Azak's
Amendment.
changes, amendment
Yep.
to the minutes from the February 7th, 2023 meeting.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. It's properly second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Actually, the 2 that weren't here probably shouldn't vote on that because you weren't here for the minutes. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, it does pass unanimous, less 2, so we're good on that. Thank you. Thank you very much. And going forward, we will make sure that the names are incorporated into the minutes. Agenda 4 is the report of the Superintendent of Schools, Mike Thomas. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On? No? Yes? Testing, you good? All right, thank you. So first, we had our student rep was supposed to join us from the Champion, Elijah. He had a last-minute issue that he couldn't make it with us tonight, so what we'll do is we'll push him to our next meeting, which I believe is the 21st, and he will be rejoined by the BHS rep as well, so they'll both do a presentation on that night, how things are going in their respective schools. So we'll just pass that over, and then I'm going to go to the podium to start the presentation by myself and members of the cabinet, the assistant superintendents. Good, you want to? So this is an update for the strategic prioritization update for the Brockton Public Schools that we had to do. It was last week with the Department of Education. It was last Monday. So as you know, through our MOU, we have to do check-ins all the time. Not only myself and Sharon, who check in with them bi-weekly. Sharon actually meets with them a lot more with all other assistant superintendents, with a DESE team that's made up of about 6 people who work directly with us as part of our MOU with DESE, and us being a school system in need of support. So this is pretty much a modified version for school committee that was done for the Department of Ed, and then also we did it for all our principals last Wednesday at our principal meeting, and then this is our update for you. It has a lot, information, pretty much the most important information of that presentation. So basically the agenda, and it was that day, is, framing our story. The priority area number 1 was high quality learning experience, the work that's being done, the connections and insights. Then priority number 2 is welcoming and inclusive environments, the work and connections, and the insights, and then looking ahead with where we're moving forward. So I just want, before I get going, I want to commend first DESE for their support, but I really want to commend the assistant superintendents for the work they're doing, not only with DESE, but the work they're doing with our principals, our department heads, associate principals, assistants, and the coordinators throughout the district to make sure all the work comes to life in the strategic plan that we have. And obviously, it's a 5-year strategic plan, so putting in place the things in year 1 of the plan, and the work they've done. And I can say that at the end of the presentation to DESE, which was an hour and a half last Monday, when we asked for any questions, they just sat there silently and didn't really have any questions at first. They were kind of like, I think they were a little bit dazed. And again, they've been good to work with, but I think, the presentation was so thorough, and the work that's being done and the work that they've seen, especially after the reorganization, and the work the teachers are doing in the classrooms, it was amazing to see them kind of stunned for a district, as you know, going back pre-COVID with our last district review was not pretty. And I think the work that's being done throughout the district, especially in the classrooms, is really showing up with the Department of Education. And they're in classrooms all the time. They do walkthrough after walkthrough after walkthrough, so our teachers see them often. So this is from there, for what they see in the classrooms it's they can see us moving forward and doing well, and again, it's a tribute to our educators. This thing's slow on the draw. So again, to kind of put our strategic plan in motion and make sure it comes alive, we bought into the district proficiency commitment, and we exist to move children towards proficiency, and we have to organize ourselves to do that, and it is our one objective that we can't deviate from. There's no compromising on this objective. So these are the priorities, and this is how we organize ourselves. A high-quality learning experience using high-quality instructional materials that are culturally responsible, inclusive, and rigorous. When I talk about inclusive, we have to make sure when you adopt, like we did with the teachers as a pilot, and with Dr. Karen Spalding and her team adopting Wonders 2023, which you approved with ESSER funding, is the new K-5 ELA curriculum that was put in this year, starting in September, and now that's pretty much fully functional in all classrooms. Something that was very important by DESE and made it clear we really needed to move away from our previous ELA curriculum. It wasn't inclusive for students with disabilities. It wasn't tailored well for English language learners. Wonders 2023 is highly rated, curated from the Department of Education. It went through a thorough process with our educators, and now it's in place. And again, that was a commitment by you, because it was close to $3 million for that curriculum. And then moving forward, how do we adopt more high-quality instructional materials for our students that also, again, has to be inclusive for students with disabilities and also English language learners. Our next big goal now is we have a task force that's led by Dr. Connors to adopt a new ELA curriculum, 9 to 12, not just at Brockton High, 9 to 12 throughout the whole school district. That's something that we have struggled with over the last few years, and now it's time to adopt a new curriculum at the 9 to 12 level, again, that follows that it's culturally responsible, it's inclusive, and it's rigorous. Priority 2 is the multi-tiered system of support for social emotional learning. And I'll go over that. And you'll hear from the others that will go over this in more detail. So I'm going to bring Sharon up, and again, I want to thank Sharon for the work that she does as Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. She keeps everybody focused on instruction, high-quality curriculum, and most importantly, inclusive practices, which make sure that we are providing the education for all students especially students with disabilities and English language learners. So she has spent a lot of time with the team working on that and keeping that obviously as an overall, our lens is equity. And as we've been saying, and I've been saying, that equity is proficiency, and as you can see us moving in that direction with all that we have in place. So I'm going to bring Sharon up, and again, I want to thank the team for all they did with this, and I want to thank Desi for their partnership, but I also want to thank the teachers and the support staff that work in the buildings every day, in the classrooms, that really, really do the hard work with our students, and they obviously should be commended. Thank you.
Good evening. And to continue with what the superintendent has been saying, the We Organize Ourselves was really the focus for us this year, along with our priorities on high-quality learning experiences, using high-quality instructional materials, and developing a multi-tiered system of support for students. Our organizing ourselves has been really critical, and working with the team of assistant superintendents for teaching and learning has been really powerful in moving the work and supporting our principals, supporting the schools, and really staying focused as a district, and empowering those teams within the school. Last time I was here, I talked about our proficiency commitment leadership team, so that voices in the schools can be heard, they can be part of a process, and we're all looking at data and how our students are doing to move them forward. So empowering our team, focusing, providing ourselves with a focus. Our focus is, as you saw it last year, and it still is, we have positive relationships, we have effective instruction, we have active reading and writing, which is all tied to literacy in many ways, but finding the focus even more on how we move those things forward. And then developing a plan. And you heard the superintendent say part of our plan was getting those instructional materials into the schools and training people well. I got a drum line behind me. That's very cool. I haven't heard that in a while. It's nice, actually. And being able to then roll things out in a way that really pushes us in a direction of proficiency. We have done so much more with trying to make sure we're making our PD valuable, because we've always had PD, we've always had time and calendar, but the goal to make sure that we are making it valuable experiences for our educators, we are moving in that direction. That is part of that organizing ourselves. And then, of course, we're looking at our data, and tonight you're going to hear our mid-cycle data after our winter star, and looking at some of the things that we've done. We're going to share with you some of that data that we are looking at, and that's only a couple of data sets. Tonight we're going to focus on STAR. When we send this out to you, you'll see it broken down even more to give you a chance to really dig into it a bit more. And as we move forward, we'll bring other data sets with us. But it's important that we are really looking at data and sharing these conversations, not just here, but within the schools and with the community as well. And with students, they need to know how they're doing. And so priority one, high quality learning experiences, is where we started. We had 2 district prioritizations that we pulled directly from our strategic plan that tied to our proficiency commitment. And we've always talked about how everything connects together, and the way we are working really demonstrates that. And so we're looking at the high quality instructional materials. We know Wonders rolled out, and it's new. And so as we watch the rollout and as we support the rollout, we'll be able to bring you more information. We're hoping to do a presentation for you in the next couple of meetings down the line to really show you where we're at in that process, so that you have a really strong sense of that rollout, and you can get a feel for the materials that the students are using. And then illustrative math. This is our second year into that rollout, and we saw last year on MCAS, we saw some results. People are more comfortable with it this year, and we're hoping to see that really pushes forward. And the idea of scaffolding those resources so students are getting what they need. The same in our middle school, really focusing on scaffolding our instructional practices and opportunities for students, and using StudySync and ELA and Carnegie Learning in math. And we are in the 4th year of Carnegie Learning, and that really pushed, and we saw evidence of improvement in math last year, and looking for the same and more this coming year. And I keep reminding everyone, MCAS is coming, and that's not something to be afraid of. It's our reality. Testing is real. We all tested to get to where we are, and we want our students comfortable and confident about testing. And so just even getting into that space of being very clear and organized about that with students is really some of the work that we continue to do. And the ELA adoption, you heard the superintendent talk about that. And at the high school level, they're also using Carnegie Math. And really being very deliberate about supporting all learners. Our English language learners, we have launched, and we'll give you some updates on launch in the coming meetings as well. And making sure that we're scaffolding and being very deliberate, and even using walkthrough tools that allow us to really target specific things that we should see for our English learners as well as our students with disabilities. And so you hear us saying walkthroughs a lot, and we do a lot of them. We had our district walkthroughs that we continue to evolve that process. We also do walkthroughs with the Department of Education, but some of our partners are also walking through, and you'll see some of the results of that even more detailed when we send you the full presentation. But we have Gleam and we have TNTP. We have a number of partners that come in and they walk through with us. So it's not just us thinking things are getting better. It's people who can really give us an objective opinion about how we're doing, helping to move the work. And so we have done a number of those walkthroughs, and we have looking at the amount of materials and funding that has been spent on the resources, really getting that into the hands of our teachers and getting them supported in learning how to best use those resources. That's been a focus of the work. This is foundation year, and we have done a lot. And now we're at a point where we are seeing that over 90% of teachers implemented the assessment tools that we have. And the platforms that we're using, we are seeing more people use the resources as we get them into the district and get people comfortable with using them. And so I'm going to call Karen up to talk about, so far, what has all that meant at the elementary level?
Good evening, everyone. So I am very excited to share with you what we have seen in the student data at the elementary level, and equally excited to listen to Dr. Connors about the middle and high school level. But it's particularly exciting because the decisions that we've made, the plans that we made, all along the way have been rooted in what we know is right for kids, rooted in the research, rooted in best practice. And so there's nothing more fulfilling than when you see the student data play out exactly as you would have expected based on those thoughtful decisions that you made. So one of the things that we have seen in the data is the movement of students into the meeting and exceeding category is reflective of what we've seen and observed in classrooms. In other words, the areas in which, based on the resources or what we're ramping up in classrooms, we would predict the data, student data, to turn out a certain way. It has turned out that way. And that, again, is reassuring because what that tells us is we're making the right decisions about the changes and shifts that we're making in instruction and curriculum. Movement of students into the meeting and exceeding category was slightly greater in math than reading. That's both in the delta and the number of schools moving 2% or more. I'll explain that in a second, which can be explained by the impact of HQIM. So HQIM is high quality instructional materials. The way we define it here, and it's defined in particular in the state of Massachusetts and nationally, but for Massachusetts, is that these are materials that have been vetted through a process, curate process at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and/or Ed Reports, which is a national process for vetting materials. And those materials are vetted to make sure that they are aligned with standards, to make sure that they're usable by teachers, and to make sure, most importantly, that they're accessible for all students. And so we expected to see a higher shift from fall into winter for math as compared to reading, because We are in our second year of illustrative math, and we are in our first year of Wonders. And actually, our ramp up in terms of professional development and materials arrival and materials distribution happened the first half of the year, and we are now in full implementation of Wonders. So Wonders hasn't had a whole lot of time to get its momentum going, and so we expected to see that. Movement of students, and this is true for all groups, for students with disabilities and for our multilingual learners, out of the not meeting category, was notably greater in reading as compared to math, which is likely the observed impact of Lexia Core 5 implementation across the district. So Lexia Core 5 is a blended learning model. Students spend a little bit of time on the computer, but more importantly, it provides the teacher with some really targeted, skill-focused data and support for students. And so what that third bullet means is that we saw more students who were at risk for failure no longer be at risk for failure in reading. And we saw that shift, and I'll show you that chart in just a moment. And we expected that because Lexia Core 5 as a blended learning model is specifically to support students at the skill level, which is particularly effective for students who are struggling and at risk of failure. Movement of our multilingual learner students into the meeting and exceeding category was greater in math as compared to reading. That was both in the delta, how much it changed, as well as the number of schools moving 2% or more. We believe this is likely an observed impact of the emphasis on language routines. So in this second year of illustrative math, one of the focuses has been on language routines. For example, the 3-read routine. If you have a student at home who has spoken about the 3-read routine, hopefully they have. But that is a routine, an instructional routine, a practice that teachers use consistently throughout the district that not only develops the sort of conceptual understanding of math, but it's also specifically a support specifically for multilingual learners. And so we expected to see more improvement in that group in math in particular. So this is our data. So I spoke general terms about it. Here are some of the numbers. In this particular chart, a larger negative number is a good thing because this is moving students out of the not meeting expectations bucket. And so you want more of a negative, more subtraction, more movement out of that bucket. And so again, what we see is for all students, for students with disabilities, for multilingual learners, we see that that negative percentage, the amount that we call it in the red because they show up in the red, and we want that to shrink. We want fewer students in the red. And so you see that happen here for reading as compared to math. And then here, this is the change of students moving them into the meeting or exceeding expectations bucket. And again, we see more of a change. So in this particular case, you want to be on the plus side of things. So we see a larger plus for all students for math, the plus 3.1% as compared to the reading at the top, which is the plus 2.6%. And so we see a bigger movement there, but we also, one of the things that I mentioned on the previous slide is we also saw more schools change by 2% or more in math. And so more specifically, out of the 12 schools, which includes the Virtual Learning Academy, out of the 12 schools for reading, there were 6 schools that were 2%, increased by 2% or higher in reading, 10 out of the 12 schools for math. And so the analogy I use, I'll use the laundry example just one more time. The analogy I use is if you've ever tried to move a pile of laundry closer to the washing machine, and if you try to do it with your arms and you walk, you drop socks, you drop shorts, you drop a shirt, and you have to go back and pick it all up. Whereas if you put it in a laundry basket and lift the laundry basket and carry it to the washing machine, you are more likely to carry all of the laundry with you. That laundry basket is high quality instructional materials. And the laundry basket is well in place for math, and it's lifting and moving schools more consistently and overall more than our reading is yet. But stay tuned, because we expect to see the same kind of movement once Wonders has had a chance to grab hold. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Connors, but not before saying thank you to all of the teachers and the staff and the leadership who have worked really, 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 really hard in getting Wonders underway on behalf of children. So thank you.
Karen's a little shorter than I am. Thank you for being here. So I'm a visual learner, so I'm going to actually move this to the first slide that I'm going to talk about. So everything that's on the words, you'll hear me say. I also want to say one of my noticings, I hear when we talk about student performance, it is about students, right? It is how did students do? And oftentimes when we do that, when we say students are not meeting, it sounds like the blame is falling on them, or when they are meeting. To Dr. Spalding's point, we really want to thank the adults because the adults have such an impact in student learning. Our students are working incredibly hard. In all of the walkthroughs 6 through 12, you see them engaged in their learning. They're building relationships with their peers and with the adults in the classrooms. So the changes you'll see is a direct impact of teachers and students working together. So just to go a little further. So meeting, the change in meeting or exceeding expectations. When you look at this data, set up just like the elementary data, our movement of students into meeting or exceeding is reflective of what has been observed in all of our walkthroughs, whether it's with Jesse, whether it's with our own internal district team. And to Dr. Spalding's point, we want to see pluses in this chart. We want to see students moving into the meeting and exceeding categories. You'll notice that we have greater gains in our middle school math than we do in middle school reading, but as Deputy Superintendent Wolder pointed out, we're only in year 2 of implementation of StudySync, which is our high quality instructional materials for ELA and reading. We're in year 4 of math implementation. So I'm not surprised by the gap there, if you will, between movement into meeting or exceeding. Additionally, movement of all students across all of these categories, multilingual learners, students with disabilities, is directly connected to teacher use of high quality instructional materials. They are using those materials with fidelity. They are embracing the support they're getting from their coordinators as well as our curriculum partners. As Deputy Superintendent Wolder mentioned, we work very closely with our GLEAM grant and TNTP. They are in our classrooms with their walkthrough tools. They are working side by side with teachers on how to take that high quality instructional material and plan for effective instruction. Carnegie is also very much in our schools. They do co-planning and facilitation and modeling of lessons using the high quality resource in our middle school classrooms. So it is definitely, I'm not at all surprised by this data, knowing what the work of the adults on behalf of students is going on in our middle schools. But that also brings us to, are we seeing a change in moving, as Dr. Spalding mentioned, out of the red? Because we want fewer students in the red. Again, you'll see greater movement out of the red in math. We're in year 4. We have very tight, consistent partnerships with our curriculum partners and working in the PLC. So those teachers have internalized those high quality instructional materials to a much deeper level at this point in implementation than our StudySync, our ELA and ESL teachers have. But we are still moving out of not meeting. One of the things that we're noticing in year 2 of implementation of StudySync is that we're focused a lot on instructional strategies and student skills, such as active reading and writing, that is grounded in our high quality instructional material. So StudySync is the table, and we are right now layering on skills because students need to develop skills to access those materials in depth. And so that's why the change is not as great in moving out of the not meeting expectations. But I, as someone who works to support the middle schools, am very pleased with what we're seeing and the way things are trending in our growth from fall to winter. Okay, so to high school, it is a different story in our 9 through 12s. But it's not a bad story. It just shows us we've got some work to do, and the work has already started. So instead of having you look at this, I'll have you look at, let me go this way. Yeah. I'll have you look at the chart while I talk about the data. So as Dr. Spalding mentioned, in this chart, we'd like to see negatives. We don't. We only see negatives in our high school reading for multilingual learners, but that is a huge cause for celebration. One of the high quality instructional materials that we've implemented this year in our bilingual department, or the fact that they have now implemented a high quality instructional materials, they are very, very early in the stages of implementation, and we're already showing gains and moving our multilingual learners out of not meeting expectations in reading. We celebrate that success. As you heard the superintendent and deputy superintendent say, we have a district-wide 9 through 12 ELA curriculum committee because they have been without a standards-based, rigorous, high-quality instructional material, and that shows in our student performance. If we don't have those available, our teachers are not using those to plan effective lessons, we cannot expect our students to improve and move towards proficiency. In math, it's disappointing, to say the least, that we are adding students into the not meeting expectations. And that is confirmed by what we see in our walkthroughs across our 9 through 12 schools. There's not fidelity to use of Carnegie Math. We are working on it, and we've made tremendous growth so far. I meet regularly with our Carnegie team, as well as the 9 through 12 leaders, to talk about what our teachers need in order to do better for our students in their math classes. So we have strengthened supports. We have increased the number of coaches in our high schools that are working directly alongside teachers, very much mirroring the model that I just showed you is working in our middle schools for teachers. So we are moving in the right direction. I have no doubt that we will see this data change the way we want it to the next time we bring it forward. The percent of our students who are moving into meeting and exceeding, though, is going in the right track in our reading for our multilingual learners. We experienced some loss in both math and ELA for the same reasons. We have the high quality instructional materials in math. We need to use them with fidelity. Our teachers need to be trained. They need to have the support, and they need to get comfortable with using it because the data shows it matters. So what we're seeing in our high school performance is just confirmed. It just confirms that what we're seeing when we do our walkthroughs in the classroom. The bottom line for all of our 9 through 12s is there is a lack of standards-driven, grade-level appropriate, high-quality use of high-quality instructional materials in our classrooms for math and ELA. We have to do better, and we are making progress in that. Mr. Precious.
Thanks, Dr. Connors. Good evening, everyone. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about the path forward. Earlier this year, we shared an update around the strategic plan, and as Superintendent Thomas alluded, that is a 5-year plan. And so we are about halfway through our first year, and just want to talk a little bit about our path forward. Again, on my laptop, the text inside those arrows was a lot bigger, so I apologize for that. But the sort of consistent theme that you've heard, we see this anecdotally when we observe in classrooms, and we've seen this in the data that we've presented tonight. There is a pervasive focus on making sure that the tasks and the texts that are in front of our students are grade level appropriate, and that we are implementing the high quality instructional materials that we have invested in as a district. And so our path forward on the right-hand side of that slide, Dr. Spalding alluded to this a few moments ago when she was talking about the success of our multilingual learners in elementary mathematics and those language routines. That is what we mean by lesson internalization, allowing teachers and giving them the support to really unpack the curriculum that they're using, to internalize it, and to really plan and prepare for the instruction they're putting in front of students. We're also, and Deputy Superintendent Wolder alluded to this as well, we're really thinking a lot about how to better support our teachers with professional growth, as well as making sure there's an aligned educator evaluation system, and that the feedback they're receiving and the evaluation ratings they're receiving is aligned to that support. We're continuing to do a lot of work, and I see Assistant Superintendent Moran in the back over there. We can wave. We're continuing to do a lot of work in partnership both with HR and with Dr. Haywood in the EDI office around retaining our educators of color. And again, you've heard this throughout the presentation this evening. We are continuing to root what we do in research, and the focus there is going to be on our foundational skills in K-3. We'll be rolling out next fall universal screening for K-3 as well. We talked a little bit about Mass Core implementation. Right now, that is focused on our freshmen, those that will be graduating in 2027, and that will ultimately be in place for all of our 912 students. And as well as the rollout on our MTSS system. So that is a 3-tiered system that has a lot of focus in Tier 1 on universal supports, both academically and socially and emotionally, as well as we get into Tiers 2 and 3, strategic intervention. A lot of this is about building a culture that is more restorative in nature and less of a focus on punitive discipline. So incredibly excited about the path forward. We have a lot of work to do, but just want to, again, to echo the sentiments of others that have shared this evening. Very much grateful for and appreciate the work of everybody in this room and the schools and teachers that we work on behalf. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you tonight. Sullivan, twice in as many nights, huh? Nice to see you. I'm going to talk to you tonight about the work that we've been that's been going on relative to the second priority area on welcoming and inclusive environments. Back when I started in July, the leadership team had just conducted an informal needs assessment around the use of interventions and strategies across grade spans in the entire district. And what came out of that was an understanding that at a baseline, we had an inconsistent use of data systems across the district. So certain schools were using certain metrics, others were using another set of metrics, and we weren't speaking the same language relative to trying to assess student need relative to social and emotional learning. We also noticed inconsistent interventions across the district and across grade spans. So even within, say, a K-5 school, school A would be using these interventions or ABC, another school would be using DEF. And so the goal really very early on became to try to bring some uniformity to the approach relative to supporting students, relative to social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health. So far, given our DESE partnership, we were given priority enrollment in a Department of Education Academy where we got DESE support. We formed a team of people from across the city to come together to begin to talk about how do we roll out a comprehensive multi-tiered model to support the social and emotional needs of our students, the mental health needs, as well as the behavioral needs. We also were awarded a DESE grant to begin to fund the people participating in these working groups, as well as pilot materials to determine their effectiveness. We know relative to research what has shown to be effective, but really what our measuring stick was what was effective in Brockton, right? What worked with our students. We also have formed a task force of educators, counselors from across the district to come together to begin to research tier 1, 2, and 3, not only core instruction, so what are the lessons, what is the essential understanding that we want all of our students to have relative to their social and emotional wellness at the end of every single year, but also what are those interventions and supports we can give to students who experience difficulty and are not responding as effectively as they can to that core instruction everybody's receiving. We also are about to launch, so in the next month or so, community, faculty, and students in grades 4 through 12 will be participating in a comprehensive needs assessment to determine, as we build a model, are we building a model that's responsive to the community, to our students, and to our faculty's professional development needs. Right now, we are, I don't think I need to talk to anybody about the mental health crisis that is going on in this country, and we are experiencing this every single day. What we have worked to understand is we need to do more preventative work prior to the point of challenge or crisis to begin to build up internal skills in our students. So when life gets tough, we don't fall apart, right? So you heard an academic skill talking about building up those building blocks of reading and math. The same is also true for social and emotional mental health and wellness. The focus there is really on ensuring that whatever curriculum or interventions we bring in is actually responsive to what our students are experiencing and to what our community is telling us we need to be thoughtful of in our planning. So there'll be more information to come, not only to the community, but to our faculty and to our students on this comprehensive needs assessment. And in fact, later this spring, we'll be back to the committee to present to you sort of the citywide results of what we found from that needs assessment. And we hope to then let that data connect to our model, and you can see the connection between here's the need and here's what we're doing about it. We're also thoughtful of revising our district curriculum accommodation plan. So this is the document that says when a student experiences difficulty in the Brockton Public Schools, here's what's happened. Here's what happens. So we're trying to bring a universal framework to all of our schools to think about students in universal ways so we could sort of really leverage training and rollout of resources and interventions across the district. So again, we don't want to have certain schools doing these things, other schools doing others. Really want a district-wide approach. No matter what school you're in, your student has access to the same supports and services regardless. And the last point I'll note is we have a formal partnership with Suffolk University, and by June, all 130 plus of our administrative team will be fully trained in all 3 tiers of restorative justice. We're working to revise our handbook, so when we bring the handbooks to the committee later this spring, you will see evidence of restorative justice embedded within the discipline code. So not only are we working to train our administrators in how to implement practices, we're also adjusting our practices and our policy and procedure to ensure we're taking a more responsive and restorative approach so that we're not as punitive with our discipline. What we have learned over time is removal of discipline-based removal from school has a negative impact on life outcome and likelihood to graduate. So as we're really thinking about how do we engage our kids differently, we are working to train our administrators, begin in the summer into the fall to begin to train our staff to establish more restorative relationships. So if you've done something to harm the community, it is an incumbent upon you to fix that. Right? What if you've the old adage of if you break it, you need to fix it, right? Like, so removing you and just saying go away really has negative long-term impacts on the mental health and well-being of our students. So we're really trying to be thoughtful in our planning relative to behavior, social, emotional, and the mental health needs of our students. We also have one of the metrics. So right now we're working to build a system. So I don't have the same data that my other colleagues can show you on reading or math achievement. What we do have are some baseline measures. So VOCAL is a state-administered survey. It's not something that Brockton develops or delivers. It's administered by the state, and it's generally administered during MCAS administration. So once the testing is done, the students will take VOCAL. And what VOCAL is, it is a survey that assesses climate and culture in our schools. To what extent do kids feel safe? To what extent do kids feel like they belong? It's focused on students in grades 4, 5, 8, and 10. And right now, we have data from the spring 2022 administration. We'll be administering it again in 2023, and we will be using those two data sets to be our baseline, right? So this is going to be one independent measure that I can come back to you year after year and show you the progress we're making on our social and emotional model through an independent measure such as vocal. We'll also have our own screening data. So what is that data that's suggesting certain students need intervention? And I can talk to you about the skills they're demonstrating and where certain risk ratios were at the start of an intervention versus after an intervention. But this is a piece of data that is universal. It's consistent across the state, so you can make some sort of district-to-district judgments about results. But this is an independent measure that we hope to bring back to you to show you the impact of the work that we're doing on climate and culture and student well-being in our schools. In terms of looking ahead, so after 7 months, we've accomplished much, but we have a lot to look forward to in the next few months to really prepare for our multi-tiered launch in the fall. So the first is really establishing those multi-tiers of instruction, intervention, and support. So again, what are the district-wide social and emotional learning standards that we want our kids to demonstrate knowledge of by the end of the school year? And what are those behavioral expectations that we hold for every member of our community? We also are looking at reorganizing our existing staff and really focusing on school-based support teams. Right now, not all of our schools have the same access to supports and services. And right now they're district-wide. And for example, the wait time to actually get the consultative support of, say, a behaviorist right now is about a 2 to 3 week wait. Right, so we really want to be thoughtful that we have the resources we need to deploy thoughtfully into schools to support our students in the moment and not having to wait for the appropriate support or service to be assigned. We are also, again, thinking through restorative justice as our tier 1 approach for our behavioral intervention. So all behavioral interventions will begin with a restorative approach. And our tier 1 social and emotional learning is to be determined. So hopefully when I come back later in the spring, I'll be able to say to you, our task force has met and they have reached consensus on this is our core tier 1 program for social and emotional learning. We're not there just yet. Our team is still researching and identifying the measures they want to pilot and evaluate this spring. In terms of revised IST means instructional support team. So when a student is having difficulty in school, that is the team of professionals, the instructional support team at the school, who will meet to problem solve around providing supports and interventions to the student. And so we are working to train and support our school-based teams and building leaders on a collaborative and interdisciplinary team decision-making process to really identify student needs. We're training them to be thoughtful of the whole child, right? So just identifying a student to the way they behave for the 6 hours they're with us without being thoughtful of family structures and systems, community connections, community supports, community-based services they might be receiving, we're really not thinking of the child as holistically as we need to really produce strong results. And so that training will kick off this summer and into the fall once we have our school-based teams established. But it is, you might hear it referred to sometimes as a trauma-informed approach or what's truly informed, it really should be called child-informed approach, right? We really be thoughtful that we are cognizant and aware of the student and their needs across multiple settings. Again, their behavior, right, does not tell us all of who they are. It tells us they're having a hard time and they're communicating to us in this way. And we have to dig a little bit deeper, right, in order to truly help our students achieve. In terms of communication and collaboration, that will be in my office to really be thoughtful in partnership with principals to be communicative and clear with the community on here is the teaching we're doing for our students across our tiers. And here is how you can access those supports and services if your child's having a difficult time. We need to clearly articulate those tiers for social, emotional, and mental health. We have to really be supportive to build in principles to focus on those school-based structures, right? To ensure that every student in every single school, right, no matter where you go to school, has access to these high-quality supports. Just like you heard my colleagues talk about high-quality instructional materials, I'm going to be advocating for high-quality intervention supports and materials, right? We need to have high-quality evidence-based materials and programs that actually, that we know work to put with our students to show progress. We're also being thoughtful of using real data to improve relationships and learning outcomes. Every student should feel as if they belong with us. And the way in which we make a student feel has a direct relationship on their academic and social emotional outcome. And so to pretend that we can only think of students as calculators or encyclopedias, right, really doesn't take into account who children are and how we can get the most out of them and really help them reach their potential by seeing them as whole children, right, and not just in pieces. And finally, really being thoughtful of the professional development needed on the programming, on the tiered interventions, on the restorative justice of rollout. That is a significant, will be a significant culture shift in the Brockton Public Schools when we move to restorative justice. And what we know about adaptive change is it will be difficult and it will not be easy, but if we stay the course, right, we are confident that our students will benefit in the long run. In terms of the data to come, when I come back, I hope to be able to, again, use the results from the vocal surveys as our baseline to say, here's where we were, and as we work to implement this new model, here's where we're going to see that progress come in over time. And again, it's an independent measure. We'll also have results from the district-wide social and emotional and mental health surveys. We will use that information to inform our tiered programming, and we will also have baseline needs established for students in grades 4 through 12. We'll also have baseline understanding established for our educators and administrators, and be able to really thoughtfully plan professional development to help them grow. And finally, we will also have a baseline understanding of our parent and community knowledge of their own children and the needs and challenges they see presented in their kids at home. So any of you who are parents in the district will also have the opportunity to fill out that survey and let us know what you might be experiencing at home with your kids, so we can be really thoughtful that when we plan for the whole child, and that includes community parent involvement. So there will be parent trainings and to learn more about our programs and interventions, so we can really be partners, using similar vocabulary, using similar approaches, so that there is a whole community approach to working with our students. We'll also have results from our screenings, as well as the impact of pre and post intervention surveys, checklists, and SIL assessments. So of the kids identified for intervention, there'll be a pre-assessment, a pre-intervention assessment, an intervention, and then a post-assessment. And we're going to be really gauging to what extent are kids demonstrating those skills as one of the metrics to bring back to you. And finally, our biggest hope is that through the implementation of this multi-tiered model, by really being thoughtful of student need, that we will see significant changes in the use of exclusionary discipline across our schools. And at that point, I'll turn it back to Superintendent.
So we can answer any questions and bring members back up if you want to ask them detailed questions. Go ahead, Kathy. Actually, I'm not supposed to call on you. The mayor is. Sorry, Mayor.
I was just thinking the same. First of all, to put a presentation like this together and to have your whole leadership team here share in the results of it, I, number one, want to say thank you. And sometimes that's like herding cats. And so I know what that's like. So thank you for that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we saw a presentation probably, I don't know, it must have been 6 months to 8 months ago, and we had a bar graph. And we talked about the value of data and using data to drive our decisions. And I'm a big proponent of, if you can measure it, you can manage it. And to be able to see the data just speaks to me to say that we are truly in the weeds working with every single student. To see the points like 0.6 up or down. And so for that, I feel like we have evolved. Even from that, even in the past 6 months, we've evolved. And I just want to point out that I want to make sure I say this right. Is it Lalebois? Is that how you pronounce your last name? Lalebois? Oh, okay. I wanted to say that, in the workplace, when you're managing people, that when you hire somebody, you hire the whole person. And so your point to understanding the whole student and coming at it from a holistic point of view they need both sides of the house. They need the academic support and they need the emotional support, because if they don't have one, they're going to lose. They need both. And so I just want to, even without the data, you can see the direction that you're going in terms of supporting them on that level, so that they can then be their best academic self. So that's what I got out of the presentation, and I would just like to thank everybody for it.
Any other members of the school committee have any comments or thoughts at this time? Mr. Homer, please.
Just a simple question. The next date, the next STAR testing date, when the students would try this again?
Sean? First 2 weeks of June. Yep. Once we get through the MCAS. Yep. And again, I just, as they say, a leader is judged as a good leader. So when you're doing my evaluation, judge me on the people that I surround myself with. And you always surround yourself with people that are much smarter than you are. And I think I've done that. But I think, DESE has starting to, working with us and working with our teachers, is starting to use us as a model for other schools that are in need of turnaround. They use EDI's, the ACT conference, as a model that they have put out there. So, with Renee and her team and the work she's doing, and all this work obviously has a lens in equity. So Renee is part of this whole teaching and learning team that, again, keeps a lens on equity, especially when you're adopting curriculum and picking readings and those kind of things. But then, it's just the work the team has done has been extraordinary. But I think it's, I just keep going back, because you can put things in place, you can put structures in place, but it's what happens in the classroom every day between the teachers and students that you can't really, there's no price tag on that. That's where the work happens. So it's our job to support them. And again, like Karen and Michelle said, give them the materials they need so they can do their job. And as we spent several years cutting, not only first thing we did was cut materials and new curriculum and technology, and then you cut people. So all those years being behind us, you can see what teachers can do with the materials that they need and the support they need to do their job. And now, as you know, it's harder than ever as we come out of COVID. So I want to thank them for the work they've done, and the things that they do in their classroom, not only with the students, but with their students' families as well.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Any last comments or questions to any members presented tonight? Mrs. Rivas-Mendez, please.
I have a question on the social emotional learning. So you talked about vocal, and you mentioned how that's one of the data points that you're going to use for the next 2 years. Just like you mentioned that one, and then another assessment. What was the other assessment? It was vocal and...
Oh, our general needs assessment?
Yeah.
So that is in partnership with the Boston University Child Study Lab, and they are working with us to survey, to establish a baseline about need. So we have the vocal survey is the independent survey by the state. That will be one of the standard tools that we'll use over time to gauge our progress. The needs assessment survey lays out our baseline for internal in Brockton. Like how are our kids responding to questions around how are they feeling, about friendships, about regulation skills, about behavioral concerns. We'll then use that as a dipstick every couple of years as well to sort of see the progress we're making overall.
Okay, so I just wonder about the effectiveness of vocal, because it's happening right after the MCAS. So that's just my wonder on it, and how honest are students being about that. And then my other question / comment is, you talked a lot about having similar vocabulary and approaches, having consistency across the district. I wonder, how are we being consistent to transfer that at the house? Like, so as we know, education starts in the home. So what's the conversation that we're having with families to continue to have that consistency at home?
Absolutely. So once we identify those, that the core program that everyone will receive, that's where you begin to see parent workshops, parent evenings to explain, to give you the tools and the resources you need as a parent to sort of partner with us around that vocabulary usage and the community-based approach. So we haven't identified the what yet to be able to sort of bring everybody else into the conversation. That's ongoing now with that task force.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I had another question, but it was on the high school level, so it's more for Michelle. So she talked about, well, Michelle, I feel like I can talk to you. You talked about there's no fidelity in the high school level to Carnegie Math, which is the curriculum. I wonder, why is there fidelity in the middle school level versus the high school level? And is it the same curriculum or is it a different curriculum?
It's the same curriculum resource.
Yeah.
If I could answer why, I would play the lottery and win. I think it's just maybe been just a lack of support needed for leaders and teachers to really say this is important and this is expected and we're going to do this. And now that those, because of your support, the structures are in place to support all leaders across all of our schools to do this work. And so we'll start to see that change. Part of that was my learning this year that they weren't receiving the same level of instructional support from our Carnegie partners as our middle school coordinators and teachers and leaders are. And so we've worked to ramp that up. And it was just a matter of, they were like, we'll do whatever you want to do. You need more coaches, we'll give you more coaches, because it's all part of a grant that we have from DESE. So we're working on it. We're making progress. It's just until we didn't realize it wasn't happening until this year.
So when you say, so I hear two things. I hear there's not really much buy-in from the high school level, but there's also hasn't been accountability, and that's what we're working on. But in regards to like systemically what we have in place, are teachers meeting like common planning time to talk about this curriculum, or is that something that we're going to put in place now?
So there's no common planning time in the high school schedules, but we're working to be creative. For example, last Thursday, according to our professional development calendar, was a school-based meeting. And what the leadership at Brockton High in partnership with Carnegie decided to do was use that time specifically for our 9 through 12 math teachers to come together with Carnegie to really start to get that unified message around why this is important. And as I learned many years ago as a teacher at Brockton High, the data is what, when you see the difference in the data because of what you're doing in the classroom, like way back in Brockton High's turnaround, it was our literacy initiative. And that first time when the commissioner came and celebrated the city of Brockton public schools because of our growth, teachers started to buy in, like, oh wow, this really works. We're seeing change. And so we're going to start to see that. It just, we have to get there, and to get them there, they need support. They need to see how this resource translates into their planning and how it will help students. And part of that, I think, is to create more structures where we're sharing the middle school successes and saying, look, these are some of the things we're doing. We understand the structures are different. For example, we have common planning time at the middle schools. But what are some things that we are doing that can be replicated at the 9 through 12 level?
So is common planning time something that could happen in the schedule, or does that sound?
There's a scheduling task force. I don't sit on that task force, so I can't speak to that, but we can certainly get an update for you at some point.
All right, thank you. I think that's all for me.
And I'll just weigh in, and like Michelle said, it mostly has been the lack of support for the teachers at the secondary level for curriculum implementation time. So it's a leadership issue that's part of my job. So
because
that's
I
something
also
we
wonder,
have to address.
We know that the MCAS in the high school level is so much heavily weighted because it's tied to their high school
Graduation.
diploma.
Yep.
So I just find it to be more of a, not more of a, but just as we know.
No, it's a priority, top priority. Yep. More of a. I know what you're trying to say. Yep. But it's again incumbent upon me as the leader to make sure teachers are getting the support they need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivas Mendez. Mr. Homer, please.
Just to piggyback on what Ms. Mendez was asking too, sorry, before you run away from the podium, other data points too that we could look at for high school performance when you're comparing that to elementary and middle school performance in terms of like student engagement, student completion of work, student grade, attendance to classes, things like that, other things like that that we could look at in the next review later on in the spring or in the fall next year, and just kind of review that and see how that goes, because I think that might play some part into the big changes, the big differences you see between the age groups too, and the kids' involvement in work, employment, things like that, all the things that's going on in a high school kid's life that could impact their engagement with their work that they're doing. I mean, it certainly looks from the presentation, a lot of effort being put into providing the instruction, providing the curriculum, supporting the teachers. I think the next thing I'm interested to kind of follow on to is the students' understanding of their responsibility and their engagement with their own education too, which I think is really the next thing I want to watch for is student buy-in. And I was taking some notes to check into my house too with my own kids, so thank you.
Well, and I think a few months back, I recall speaking about some of the work that Principal Burns is doing at Brockton High, for example, with really utilizing the role of the dean and the assistant dean in this case management style, because we have behavior interventionists, we have school adjustment counselors, and how are we using data, for example, in talking with Principal Burns last night about period 6 cuts. Who are those students that are cutting period 6, and what are we as the adults doing to learn why they're cutting period 6? Is it the class? Is it the teacher? Is it maladjustment with peers? What is happening? And so they are pulling that data, identifying those students, and then bringing in the deans and assistants, and that case management team have been tasked with reaching out to the families, not giving the list to the guidance counselor to do it, right? It's a team approach because the students need all of this support, and bringing the family in as a partner to say, hey, here's what we're seeing, and when your child or our student cuts period 6, it has implications for their learning and their performance. So we are, they're working diligently on that, data-driven, of course.
Any additional questions, comments at this time? Mr. Sullivan, please.
I had just one comment for the superintendent. I just wanted to congratulate you and your team for this excellent PowerPoint. It was really fabulous. We showed the positive and negative, all the data. Usually it's just the other way around. You see the positive only. But here we see both. And it's, I have to take my hat off to you and the entire team. What a great job you did. And what a great PowerPoint. It was fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Members of the team, thank you very much. That was really, really helpful. Thank you.
So May, I just want to go back to my first item because our student representative has made it, Elijah from Champion, so we're going to bring him up.
All right.
Actually, Elijah, you can sit right here. Thank you for making it. We appreciate the effort.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
This?
That's on. You just got to make sure you bring it close.
Okay.
He's waiting for his PowerPoint. Oh, we have it over here. Is the clicker still over there? Oh, I'll grab it.
Ready? Good evening, Mayor Sullivan and Superintendent Thomas, and to my fellow committee members. My name is Elijah Privet, and I am a sophomore at Champion High School. I wanted to update you on the positive things happening at Champion. These are the students of the month. These students have shown effort in academics, behavior, and responsibility, and overall goodwill. These Black History Month projects in Mr. Spose's class, these students had to create a vocabulary based on a person of color and recognize their achievements. school improvements in Champion. We have new clocks in the classroom that provide messages, alerts, and classroom bells. This is our Champion boxing program at Champion. At Cap Yellows, Mr. Sproles secured 6 memberships for 4 Champion students and 2 Brockton High students. I'm the one in the blue. Yeah.
Good job you got there.
We also have a Period 6 entrepreneur class with Royce Vios. He comes to Champion Tuesday and Thursdays to work with Champion and Brockton therapeutic students to help them find their futures and careers. In the future, in the spring, we have a parent paint night. We also have upcoming parent-teacher conferences March 16th, 5 to 7 p.m. We are also working on getting the green room started this spring. We are hoping to have our first sneaker ball, a dance where everyone wears sneakers, obviously. We are hoping to build on a stronger and better Champion.
Thank you, Elijah. We appreciate your report, we appreciate your PowerPoint, and thanks for coming. We look forward. You'll be back again.
Of course.
So
That was
thanks.
awesome. Any questions any questions at all? Thank you again. That was fantastic.
Nice job. So next is items to refer to subcommittee. I have one.
Okay.
We have, I would suggest, ask the committee to have a superintendent contract meeting on the 21st so I can update you on my goals for the year. And, we could do that before the school committee. And then next week also we start our running finance subcommittee meetings because now that the governor's budget has been in,
Yep.
Aldo has worked with Troy
Yep.
to kind of decipher those numbers, and Aldo will start to go over those. That will be next Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and that will be the only meeting unless, I don't know if there's anything else, and then obviously others can refer, but those are the two things that,
Superintendent, the 21st, so we'll meet here in 2 weeks at 7. How much time do you need on that other meeting? 6?
it would be
Or
6.
6:30?
6 o'clock.
Okay. So we'll do that.
And then next week would start finance at
Finance.
6 o'clock.
Okay. All right. And we'll get
And
that
then any
notice
other
out.
items, obviously, that any other
Yeah.
member needs referred.
Thank you. Thank you again. I'm going to go to Agenda 5, and then I'm going to take the floor as the chair. Agenda 5 is the unfinished business. It's discussion and potential vote, appointments of subcommittee members for 2023 calendar years. As a chair, I will make it clear right now, there's going to be no vote tonight, and I'll tell you why. I do want to thank everybody for the interest in this. I also think the fact that we've been able to postpone it for a while, been able to vet it out. Attorney Mello was here tonight. Attorney Sarah Spotify has been fantastic. We've been able to look at what other cities in Massachusetts do relative to bids and how they handle it. Some actually just have the superintendent of schools handle all bid review, and then it gets approved by the full committee. Others have the full committee act as the review process for bids. That's the way I'm leaning right now. I believe that we need full committee, not just 2 or 3 or 4 members. We need full committee involved in the process from the onset. I also want to tell you why. We're going to be spending $100 million. That's going to be the city side for this building. So it's going to be the largest project in the history of the city of Brockton. It's actually even going to be more money than the $98 million public safety building that we're doing right now. So there's going to be a plethora of bids, and I need every member, all 7 duly elected members, to be able to be on it from day one. I just think nothing can get lost in translation that way. Everybody is elected the same way. So right now, the way I'm doing it is I'm working with legal counsel, and Peter is here tonight, and I want to thank you, Peter, again, a product of the Brockton Public Schools. I believe the entire bid committee should be the 7 members that are elected from the wards, less me, I don't think I should be on it, and I'll tell you why. I believe there's a potential conflict because I serve as the chair, but also the mayor. But we also want to have an odd number. We don't want to have an even number for voting purposes. So right now, we're looking to have an analysis that Attorney Mello and Attorney Spadaford are doing relative to the entire bid process. I also want to make it clear that our school committee policies may need to potentially be amended. I believe that they can be, Peter, and you and I have talked about that. But I just feel that at the end of the day, we as a school committee have to set the example for future school committees, future mayors, future superintendents. We need to turn the page on past practices. It's easy to say, well, the school committee used to do it this way. Great, but if we look at Methuen and Quincy, they do it a different way. Now, is their way better than our way? Potentially. But when we're talking about the investment in the kids, I just feel that as the chair, as long as I'm chair, as long as I'm mayor, I'm going to be chair, and I'm running again just to let everybody know, I want everybody to have the same voice, the same ability to vet out a process, the same thing to be able to ask questions at the onset. It doesn't help us as a collective body to ask questions after the fact. And the past practices have been, there's been members that are the subcommittee bid review, right? Subcommittee set by the chair. They're able to vet out the bids, and then it comes before us and we take a vote. I don't think it's good form to do that. So right now, there will be no vote tonight. There will be a vote in 2 weeks' time, the 21st. That's going to give Sarah and Peter a little more time to give us the information on, what does Haverhill do? What does Fitchburg do? What do the other gateway communities do? So I do want to thank all of you. There's been a lot of calls and a lot of questions about this, but at the end of the day, we're here to help the students and the staff. But at the same time, we are charged a fiduciary duty when we're talking about spending taxpayers' money, and we're spending money on the city side and school side to help that. So that's what I wanted to say tonight. I believe that all of us, when we get the information from Peter and Sarah, will have the same vision. We'll be charged with understanding that when a bid review comes before us, it shouldn't come before just 3 members. It has to come before 7 members, and then ultimately there'll be a vote. Now, the night that we vote on bids, as chair, I will recuse myself. I won't vote on it because ultimately myself and Mike are going to be signing contracts. I sign many contracts right now as the chair of the school committee and as the mayor, and I don't want anybody to ever say there's a conflict there. So are there any questions? Because we are paying Mr. Mello to be here tonight, but I thought it was important to have Peter here because this is a hot issue. A lot of people have a lot of passion about this, and I respect all of you. And I'm going to look around and say that I respect all of you, but we have a duty to make sure that all of us are on the same team. Anybody have any questions for me as the chair or Attorney Mello? So in 2 weeks, Mr. Rodriguez, please.
I just want to thank you for actually, looking at different options. I had a big issue with this this subcommittee. Certain issues that arise, and if anybody wants to go back and look at the meetings, they can feel free and view the meetings and see how some of this stuff is done. And it's
That's why we're
good to
turning the
actually
page,
look.
Mr. Rodriguez. That's
No,
why I articulated that. We're turning the page.
That's what I'm trying
Yes.
to think, because, certain people have issues of, we've always done it this way. Why are we changing this way? So I just want to make sure that those individuals don't have an issue with this.
But
moving
those
forward.
individuals are all duly elected the same way, and we're all going to have one vote. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Again,
ask a
yes,
question,
Mr.
Mayor?
Superintendent, please.
As you know, the members are on several subcommittees.
Correct.
So is there, and maybe this is a question for Peter, so it would be helpful if this could become an agenda item on a regular school committee meeting.
Yes.
So it's discussed at a formal school committee meeting, and then that way, you would recuse yourself.
That's
from
right.
the
That's
vote,
the vision
but-
we had today when we talked
But I
with
just
legal
don't want,
counsel. Yep.
with some members being on 9, 10 subcommittees, and then the negotiations start up, it just would be much easier if it's an agenda, when there's a bid, it goes on as an agenda
It
item.
would be a duly authorized agenda item for the full school committee, and the only difference would be, it's not really a subcommittee, it's a meeting of the whole, minus me as the chair. I would not vote on that. But it would not be, because listen, time is of the essence. We're going to have a lot of bids coming in fast and furious, right? I already see that on the city side with the public safety building. So to try to schedule other meetings for all these members, that's not going to work. So it would be the same school committee night, but we would have an agenda item charged specifically for bids. Attorney Mello, that's correct, right?
That sounds fair. There are different options, different ways to do it, but that sounds like a reasonable approach. Yeah, I just think it's very difficult when school committee members also, they're the only elected officials, I mean, the mayor does this on the city side, but they're the only elected officials that actually bargain with now 8 unions. And then we have several other subcommittees, so being able to do it at a regular school committee meeting as an agenda item, I just think is more respectful of their time.
I will say that 2 weeks of time, 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to have a lot of information coming from law, but 2 weeks from tonight, an agenda item is we are going to have to take a motion to amend our rules and regs specific to the bid. Because right now it is defined in our rules and regs, and we want to make sure it's the entire 7 members that make up the full committee throughout the wards. So that will be on the agenda item. Any questions for that? Seeing none, we'll move on. And again, thank you. We're all in this together, and we'll get it done. We're going to move on now, and I am going to have to refer this to Superintendent Thomas, but it's new business, number 6. It's discussion and potential vote relative to new negotiating subcommittee, and the floor is yours, Superintendent.
So thank you. We had, Dr. Moran, could you come up and just give me a quick update on our new union that was formed? I believe it's the access control specialist.
Speaker, Mike.
Sorry.
You and I
You
aren't
can
that
sit
good
here-
at that.
You
You
can
know
always
that,
sit here,
Mike?
Kathy, if you didn't want to walk all the way
You
across.
ever notice that, Mike? You and I, we're not that good at that.
Yeah, I'm not good
No,
at pressing.
Not so good.
the button here. With the Merv Griffin microphone.
Good evening. So the access control specialists who work at the high school and another location as
Champion.
well, the Champion, are now unionized. So we were looking for a subcommittee that can work with that group so we can start negotiations with them. So we'll be building the contract from scratch.
Yeah, this is a brand-new contract with no other. They right now are non-union, and they applied to the state to be recognized as a union, so, which they've gone through the whole process with the Department of Labor, contacted Sarah Spada for. So the next is now a subcommittee, obviously, that we'll have to negotiate with them.
Mr. Rodriguez, please.
I know I asked this during the transportation and safety. Who's their boss? Who do they answer to? I mean, they got
Right now,
unionized,
they,
so there's got to be a boss.
Yeah, they answer to, right now, they're deans they're assigned to buildings, so they're an answer to the deans of their daily assignments, but their training has to come from the school police department. But the school police, because of their rules and regs, are not allowed to be their direct supervisors, because access control specialists assist at the doors when the students go through the metal detectors, and then that means they can search bags if it goes off. Police cannot. So with them being under the direct supervision of the police, it's a violation of the law. So they have to be under direct supervision of either a principal or a dean. So that's why they fall under a school administrator. But again, their training has to come from, it's both the school for de-escalation, which would come out of Jamie's office, but obviously for things to look for as far as school law would come from the school police.
Ms. Zazak, please.
Thank you. Dr. Moran, how many access control, how many do we have?
There are approximately 20 at this time.
20, okay. And this is going to be a brand-new negotiations, starting from scratch. Because I know we already broke up some of the negotiations, and we have food service starting. So,
So I don't know, I mean, there are committees that obviously are here just if the case is grievances and disputes with the contract, even though most of them were not in bargaining with this year. So I don't know if you wanted to take a current committee, and I just, however you want to do that as a group, is if you want to use one of the current committees that is not negotiating, whether you use them as,
Vice Chair?
The only committee that's negotiating this year is food service, so every other committee is that's just a placeholder. So we could
we're
literally-
happy to have,
Yeah.
No, school police is not this year.
No, not this year.
No,
The
they-
only one this year is food service.
Food
So all the
service.
others are there kind of just as placeholders. We could take anyone. But do we have to vote first that we are
No, I
going
think
to
it's
establish
okay to
this?
ask for volunteers first, and then
Yeah, I mean, we could do it any way. I mean, we could take a vote tonight, which I think is probably best practice. The only issue there is, you know, we've already incorporated some votes relative to teams that will never meet, right? Probably never meet.
Correct.
So I don't know if it's good form to take one of those teams, but whatever the will of the school committee is on this one. I mean, this is a new thing. It's not a big deal, quite honestly, relative to
I'll
establishing.
volunteer if anybody wants to join me on that. I know Jared and whoever else is doing the,
I'd love to, but I got enough on my own
All
already.
right.
whoever's
Why don't
doing
we-
the food service.
So, could you just read that? Who's on that, Jared? Mr. Homer?
That one is Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Ehlers, and myself. We're the IBAA and TEA representatives. So if the three of us,
Yeah.
that's one that doesn't meet right now. That negotiation's not active, so I can do that.
Yep. Sure.
Well, we would list it as a separate one with the same membership. Yes, yes. Is there any objection to that?
I just have a question.
Zazac?
So this is the question that I have is, even though it's not a subcommittee, it falls under the subcommittees, and our subcommittees are 4. Is Mr. Attorney Mello still here to clarify? Are we fine with the 3 on negotiations? Do we need the 4? I know we have 3 with a quorum. Does it fall under that, even though it falls under subcommittees?
Yeah, that's okay. He was getting charged by the hour. He can go.
sure we check.
Every penny counts, and I'm a lawyer. Believe me.
sure we check his
I mean, I
bill
think honestly,
Bill
on
submitted,
That's what I'm
make sure
running
it go-
into with
we go
food
over
service.
it.
yeah, you know, he stopped at exactly 8:35. Let's
you,
make
Mr.
sure
Mayor.
you
We'll
note
make
that.
sure.
So that was my question with
We'll
food
watch the
service, because
video to see when
we
he
only have
exited.
3, and I just want to make sure if we're missing one person, are we okay to still meet with 2, even though it falls under the subcommittee assignments, the negotiations?
I believe that was asked and answered. I mean, what we could do tonight is we could vote it tonight, and then if Peter and Sarah told us other, we needed to add a member, we would just take an amendment on the floor in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, and we can also add it for food service as well?
Correct.
Because it's only 3.
Correct
Okay.
time.
with,
I'd like to just make a comment.
Yes,
that
please.
all of the negotiations are only 3 members. The subcommittees are 4.
Correct.
So the negotiations, all of them are 3. If we add a 4th to food service, we have to add a 4th to all of them.
That was, but they fall under subcommittee assignments when we're given our assignments.
So why don't we do this?
I think there's a difference between subcommittees and negotiating.
Correct.
yes,
There is.
Correct.
it was
What-
vetted out that it was only for, not for negotiations with the 4 members, that negotiations can stay 3 members, and then we only need 2.
So why don't we-
Actually, folks,
right.
That's how it was vetted
We
last
needed
year.
2 to move forward. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take a vote relative to the 3 members, so it'd be Mr. Homer, Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Ehlers, to be added on to a separate negotiation team specific to what Doctor just shared with us. Is there a motion on the floor for that?
Motion to approve the access control specialist, new subcommittee, bargaining unit.
Motion was made. Is there a second? You lost that one, Mr. Sullivan. Mrs. Rivas Mendez. All in favor of that, please raise your hand. All opposed, it passes unanimous. But Mrs. Azak, we will get an answer again, just to make sure on that.
Yeah, just, it's not clear in our policy.
Belts and suspenders
so
on that, yep.
We have to work on making our policies a little clearer.
We got them working on a lot of things right now on that, so we'll throw that into the mix.
So I do have some questions, and actually, Dr. Moran, under new business.
Sure, yeah. Please.
Do we have an update as far as, I know we voted at the last meeting for HR and our school police to go ahead and start with the written police exam. Do we have an update on that?
I can give you an update. I meet my bi-weekly meeting, me and Dr. Cobbs, with Lieutenant Maker and Sergeant Livingston. They gave us an update today. They have about right now 76 people signed up, much more than expected, especially from the exam company. Over 76 for April 1st exam, and the enrollment period's still open. So they'll take as many as sign up. And one positive note of this people they've seen, they haven't gone through all 76, but There is a good amount of people that are already academy trained that have signed up for that exam, and also our push to have more female officers. There's a good amount of female candidates who have signed up for the exam as well. So it's a lot more than we expected, which is great because, as you know, the trend in law enforcement, as Mr. Rodriguez can tell us, is they're not getting the applicants they once got years ago. So
No,
it's
definitely,
a
'cause
good positive sign.
I know we were looking for March, so April 1st is fine.
Yep.
And then I have another question, building naming. So I know we were waiting to name the champion school. Do we have like a tentative?
It's just, Jim, an update on the installment of the sign?
It's up to the committee here when they want to have the dedication.
Okay, but the sign's ready to go?
The sign is yes, it is storage now at our vendor's office. It's already produced and made, so
All right,
whenever you want to.
We'll call Mr. Jones tomorrow and see.
So we'll have it installed when the school committee tells me we're ready to do the dedication.
Perfect.
And I was
check with
waiting,
Mr.
I was-
Jones.
I
Mike
was
can
also
check with him
waiting
tomorrow.
for warmer weather because
Yep.
Mr. Jones struggles in cold, so I'm hoping that we can, get it done. We'll shoot for within the next 3 weeks.
Perfect.
And my last question, I know we had penciled in a couple of dates for the retreat, and one of them is actually next weekend.
So
Did we
that's off the
finalize?
that one's off the table.
Okay,
so.
that is, okay.
So it would either have to be the 25th or the 31st. I didn't put that out there as an option, but
Whatever's easier for everybody.
Okay,
Just next weekend wasn't going to work.
just so we can pencil it in.
Yep.
Okay.
We also, I know we did, at the musical last year, we did a tentative stage dedication to Carol Thomas and Vinnie McCrena, and we made a pledge that night.
That's
We were
ready to
gonna have,
go.
yep, I know, it looks beautiful. We were going to have another night where they could be, because they didn't have family and friends there. They had some friends, but they wanted to have a better event. And so we made a pledge to do that. So we just have to check with Carol and Vinnie to see what works for them and tee that up. We could just put that, Lisa, to reach out. We'll work on a date. Yeah.
Or the spring concert in May.
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
I think they want to, we'll talk to them
All right,
about
we'll
it, but
talk.
we don't want to forget about it. Week from this Thursday, the 16th, I want to thank Superintendent. I'm having my first in-person State of the City. Since I've been mayor, I haven't been able to do an in-person State of the City because of a little thing called COVID. So it will be in the Nelson Auditorium. It will be 6:30 to 7:30. Great thing about that is it's Parent-Teachers Night up here. I want to thank Principal Burns as well. So all of you will get the official invitation, but anybody watching or anybody here, we'd love to see you. Again, 6:30 to 7:30 in the Nelson Auditorium on the 16th of this month. The other thing that I'm going to humbly ask that we spend some money on is if you look at that sign right there, the AED, to only have it in the lobby, gym, and CAF is asinine. So
That's old.
Well, we need one in here, number one, right, because we meet on a regular basis. So, Mr. Petroni, I'll get your wallet out because we're going to be buying some, okay? Yeah, you can. You might be able to.
My God.
No, we do. I do want to thank Superintendent because 2 years ago when I was coaching basketball at West, I had a student collapse, and Mike listened to me and he acquired them. So, but we have to go to some other venues here, not just at Brockton High School, but all the other schools. But we really should have one here and one in the main auditorium as well. So, but we will. So,
Yeah, I'll have the signs updated too, but we'll definitely.
all right.
Thank you. And actually,
I mean, you and I aren't young anymore. If we go down, who's going to?
Oh, no.
Some of us just look at us, but that's all right. What do you got to say, Zach?
and actually, Dr. Applin, the loss of Dr. Applin, it's such a huge impact on BPS, and she's an icon. Even if you didn't have her as a housemaster years ago, you knew who Dr. Applin was. So I had spoken to Superintendent Thomas. I'd love to, as a committee, maybe find something and honor her somehow. Find something as far as like dedicate something or do something in her memory. So if the committee's up for it, maybe we can just brainstorm and figure something out. I know she would love it. Last time I saw her was at one of the events, and she was so excited that she was invited, and that, BPS still thought to invite her to these events. So we need to honor her and honor her legacy at BPS. So, but if the committee's up for it, maybe we can do something in her honor, whether it's this school or, years from now, the new BHS is going to be years down the road. But if we can figure something out, for Dr. Applin.
Yeah, I mean, she has no living relatives, so yes, we should definitely do that. Matter of fact, her attorney dropped off a box to my office as the mayor, and I've brought it to Central, and they're going to save it. I mean, it was her diplomas and stuff like that. You know, couldn't just throw it out. So I concur with that. We'll come up with something fitting.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
And as final reminder, tomorrow is the legislative breakfast hosted by the South Shore Superintendent Roundtable, and everybody's gotten an invite on that. Obviously, I know people obviously work, so if you can make it, great. If not, Jamie can put together a highlight because Jamie is the chair of the South Shore Superintendent's Roundtable. He has been for a long time, before he joined Brockton. So if you can't make it, he'll put together the talking points that they go over tomorrow in a PowerPoint. We'll make sure we get that to you.
Last thing is just to let you know, myself and Mike and Aldo and Chris and Troy in my office, we met. I meet every week with the state delegation. Senator Brady was in session today for the Ways and Means, but we were there with the newest rep, Rita Mendez, Michelle Dubois, and Jerry Cassidy. So we were able to talk to them about what our needs are. The governor's proposed budget is good for education. It really is. It looks good. It's a good hit, beneficial to us. But there is some detrimental impacts that we're seeing right now. So we worked with them. I want to thank you, Aldo and Chris. That was great. The representatives are going to speak to the speaker. They're going to speak to the Aaron Mikowitz, who's Ways and Means chair. So we're going to try to see if we can get more money. We have lost some kids, there's no doubt about that, but we need to really get the biggest dollar amount here. So just want to let you know, and we will be having another meeting next week with them as well, including Senator Brady. Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Last week, myself, Mrs. Connors, Walder, Spalding, we were at the Davis School. Mrs. Campbell honored a dozen students, several getting awards for being recognized on high achievement with the MCAS. I know it was at the Davis, but I would like to see if there was any other schools that actually had students that got this recognition so we could recognize them as well. Also, on March 20th, we'll be in front of the City Council proposing the synthetic turf fields. If it's not being moved to another date and time, if everybody that supports it can go there and support it, there's going to be a very large crowd. And then lastly, I just want to congratulate our varsity boys basketball team winning tonight 56-47 over Franklin. They're going to move on to the Elite Eight, and that was a big win for them tonight. So those congratulations to those boys and Coach Barrows and Gormley and all of them.
I think they were rated the top 5.
Yeah,
Franklin?
top 5.
Yeah, Franklin was
top
rated
5.
high.
So
yeah.
So we'll see who our next matchup is going to be. So.
I also want to give a shout out to Brookfield. I went to Brookfield and read to all the second graders the other day. I've been doing it for 15 years. It's, an opportunity to see the kids. They asked questions that were unbelievable. Do I still go on dates? Yes, I still do go on dates with my wife. But I will say that, but the ability to see these youngsters is just, that's why we serve, right? We serve for them. So I do want to give a shout out to Brookfield and all the other schools. A lot of us will be going to a lot of different schools and reading. I do want to thank Jensen Denoise coming here again tonight, and thank you for that. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to, I'm sorry, Mr. Homer, please.
Just one more point. I just wanted to congratulate the students who participated in the All-City Chorus concert last night. That was phenomenal. And the high school choir that participated too put on an excellent performance, which I think hopefully is available on the Brockton channels. If you haven't seen it, it's great. And then we have the band concert, also the middle school band concert tomorrow night as well. So really good opportunities to see those kids who are giving back to the community and how they are able to share their talents and time. There's an art show coming up soon too that'll be at the library. So again, lots of really good ways to see the students engaging outside of the classroom and sharing their talents with the community. And then finally, congratulations to the high school drama club who will be moving on to the semifinal round for the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild drama competition.
Last thing, just about the drama club, talking about Dr. Appling, they were going to throw out a bunch of her furniture, and I had suggested that we could donate it to the drama club for potential set. And so Mike, I called Mike, he jumped on it, so we were able to get a lot of the furniture that's going to be used by Bob Hogan. So just again, just want to let you know that, she's here in our minds and our memories, and we will come up with something fitting. But we're also able to benefit the drama club here at Brockton High. So any other thoughts at this time? Entertain a motion to adjourn? Motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Drive careful tonight.